The silence of the bridge was a living thing. A low hum of recycled air and distant, thrumming machinery. It was the sound of 1,000,000 tons of metal and hope hanging in the void. Lieutenant Aris Thorne felt it in the soles of his magnetic boots, a constant vibration that was the ship's heartbeat. He stood at the forward viewport of the UES Resolution, a vast, curved pane of diamond laminate that looked out upon the grandest assembly in human history. Outside, the black was studded with the lights of 1,000 vessels. Sleek, predatory Martian cruisers, their hulls the color of oxidized iron, slid past bulky utilitarian freighters from the Orion mining guilds. The miners' ships were ugly, practical things, retrofitted with shield emitters that bulged like tumors on their container-stacked spines. But they were here. Everyone was here. From the moon bases, nimble recon skiffs darted between the larger ships like silver minnows, their sensor arrays leaving faint, shimmering trails in the vacuum. It was a fleet born of desperation, a coalition forged in the shadow of a single, impossible discovery. Aris's mind drifted back, as it often did, to the day the signal arrived. Not to the press conferences or the global announcements, but to the quiet, sterile room deep in the Atacama Desert Array. He'd been a junior analyst then, barely out of the academy, staring at a waterfall of data cascading down a holographic display. It was a frequency that had traveled for 17 years, a whisper from the Sagittarius arm. It wasn't cosmic noise. It had a cadence, a deliberate, repeating structure that was as unmistakable as a drum beat. It was intentional. For months, they'd worked, fueled by stale coffee and the electrifying certainty that they were on the verge of changing the world. They'd called it the beacon. When they finally decrypted the core of the signal, it wasn't a message of greeting. It was a map, coordinates. And at those coordinates, a probe had found it. A ring of unknown alloy, a kilometer in diameter, floating in the silent emptiness of interstellar space. Humanity had found its first Stargate. A voice, calm and resonant, pulled him from his reverie. Captain Eva Nix said, "A sight, isn't it, Lieutenant?" Aris turned. Captain Nix stood by the Central Command holotable, her arms crossed. She was a veteran of the Epsilon Wars, a conflict that had nearly torn the solar system apart 2 decades ago. Her eyes, the color of a stormy sea, held the weary wisdom of someone who had seen too much. Yet they still held a spark of wonder as she gazed at the fleet. Her dark hair was streaked with gray and pulled back in a severe regulation bun that did little to soften the sharp lines of her face. Aris said, "It is, Captain. I'm just not sure if it's reassuring or terrifying." Nix allowed a faint smile to touch her lips. She said, "Every ship out there is a promise and a liability. The Martians bring the best weapons, but they're proud. They'll break formation to chase glory if we let them. The miners have the best shield tech. Their ships are designed to withstand asteroid impacts. But they're slow and stubborn. And us?" She gestured to the bridge of the Resolution, the flagship of the Earth fleet. "We're the diplomats, the glue. It's our job to make sure this glorious, chaotic mess holds together." The ship's intercom chimed softly. Ensign Kenji Lin, the helm officer, swiveled in his chair, his fingers already dancing across his console. He was young, with a shock of black hair that always seemed to defy regulation length, but his piloting skills were legendary. Lin said, "Captain, we have a priority message from Admiral Sterling at Sol Command." Nix nodded. She said, "On screen, Kenji." The forward viewport shimmered and was replaced by the stern, weathered face of Admiral Sterling. He looked tired, the skin around his eyes bruised with sleeplessness. The transmission delay was almost 2 seconds, a reminder of the vast distance separating them from Earth. Sterling's voice boomed, tinny and distorted by the light minutes it had crossed. He said, "Captain Nix, the fleet is assembled. Your final objective is confirmed. The beacon's origin point is our last, best hope. Earth's atmospheric processors are failing faster than projected. The blight, it's adapting. We're out of time. The data from that Stargate, whatever technology lies beyond it, may be our only chance to reverse the damage." The unspoken words hung in the air. If you fail, there's no home to come back to. Nix's expression was a mask of professional resolve. She said, "We understand, Admiral. The UES Resolution and the combined fleet will not fail." Nix out. The viewport cleared, returning to the silent ballet of the ships. The weight of the Admiral's words settled onto the bridge. It wasn't just a mission of exploration. It was a rescue operation for an entire planet. Dr. Lena Patel, the ship's chief science officer, spoke from her station, her voice a soothing counterpoint to the tension. She was a small woman with sharp, intelligent eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses, her gray hair tied in a loose knot. She said, "The energy readings from the gate are stable, Captain. But they're strange. It doesn't radiate energy in a conventional way. It seems to bend space-time around it, creating a passive gravitational eddy. It's less a machine and more a feature of the local universe, like a naturally occurring waterfall." Nix turned to her. She said, "Can we navigate it, Lena?" Dr. Patel pushed her glasses up her nose. She said, "Theoretically." The beacon signal contained the initial resonance key. Think of it as a combination lock. Once we broadcast that key, the gate should open a stable wormhole. The real question isn't getting in. It's what happens on the other side. The laws of physics might be different. We'll be flying blind. Nix's gaze swept across her bridge crew. Maurice, her second in command. Lynn, the best pilot in the fleet. Patel, the brilliant mind who might just keep them alive. She said, "All ships, this is Captain Nix. Prepare for jump sequence on my mark. We're going to the assembly point. Our mission begins now." A chorus of acknowledgments flooded the comms, a wave of voices from a dozen different worlds and cultures, all focused on a single point in space. The low hum of the Resolution's engines deepened as the primary drive charged. Aris felt the familiar, gentle pull of acceleration as the ship began to move. A graceful giant leading its flock into the unknown. He looked out at the Stargate, a distant, shimmering ring against the backdrop of the Milky Way. It was art and science fused, an icon to all explorers who dared to imagine the impossible. A symbol, a map, a door, and humanity was about to knock. The journey to the Stargate was a week-long, high-tension transit. The fleet moved in a loose formation, a swarm of lights against the infinite black. On the bridge of the Resolution, a quiet routine set in. Lynn kept them on course, his hands moving with fluid precision over the navigation controls. Dr. Patel and her science team worked relentlessly, analyzing the gate's energy signature from a distance, trying to build predictive models for what they were about to face. Iris managed the crew, mediated minor disputes between a Martian captain and a Belter engineer, and stood as watches with Captain Nix, the two of them often just staring in silence at the approaching anomaly. As they drew closer, the gate dominated the viewport. It wasn't just a ring. Its surface was covered in impossibly intricate carvings, symbols that shifted and flowed like liquid metal. They were not etched into the material, but seemed to be a part of its very structure. They pulsed with a soft, internal light, a slow, rhythmic beat that felt ancient and profound. Dr. Patel said, "The symbols are responding to our proximity. They're changing, reconfiguring. It's like a language, but one based on quantum states, not phonetics. Each symbol represents a complex mathematical equation." Aris asked, "Can you read it?" Dr. Patel shook her head, a look of frustrated awe on her face. She said, "Read it? Lieutenant, we can barely perceive it. It would take a century of processing time on our best quantum computers to even begin to understand the syntax." The civilization that built this, their minds operated on a level we can't comprehend. The day arrived. The fleet hung in space 1,000 kilometers from the gate, a silent, waiting armada. Nix stood in the center of the bridge, her voice calm and clear as she gave the order. She said, "All vessels, this is the resolution. We are broadcasting the resonance key now. Stand by for gate activation." A low-frequency signal, a perfect replica of the one that had crossed the galaxy, was transmitted from the resolution's main antenna. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence on the bridge was absolute. Aris held his breath. Then, the symbols on the gate began to glow, their light intensifying from a soft pulse to a brilliant, blinding flare. The ring itself seemed to dematerialize, replaced by a swirling vortex of iridescent color, a shimmering, unstable tunnel into another place. Lin said, his voice a whisper, "Whoa. Event horizon is forming." Dr. Patel's fingers flew across her console. She said, "Incredible. The gravitational lensing is off the charts. It's not just bending space, it's weaving it. The wormhole is stable, Captain, but the energy readings inside, they're chaotic." Nix said, "All ships, maintain formation. Follow our lead. We're going in." The UES Resolution moved forward, its engines pushing it gently toward the swirling maw of the Stargate. The ship shuddered as it passed the event horizon, a momentary, violent jolt as it transitioned from normal space into the wormhole. The viewport, which had shown the black of space, was now filled with a torrent of impossible colors and light. It was like flying through a liquid rainbow. Familiar constellations warped and twisted into unrecognizable spirals. Lin grunted, his hands gripping the helm controls tightly. He said, "Piloting is sluggish. It's like we're moving through something thick like water." Dr. Patel said, "It's the space-time distortion. The laws of inertia are suggestions in here, not rules. Be careful, Kenji. Overcorrect and you could tear us apart." Time seemed to stretch and compress. What felt like minutes could have been seconds or hours. The journey was disorienting, nauseating. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. The ship shot out of the wormhole into normal space, the violent colors replaced once more by the familiar black and the pinpricks of distant stars. But these were not familiar stars. The constellations were alien, the shape of the galaxy on the star charts completely wrong. They were somewhere else. A collective gasp went through the bridge. Ahead of them, floating in the silent void, was a flotilla of ships. They were unlike anything Aris had ever seen. They were shaped like elongated teardrops, their hulls a smooth, pearlescent white that seemed to absorb and refract the starlight. They were vast, easily 5 times the size of the Resolution. But they had no visible engines, no weapon emplacements, no antennae. They were perfectly, unnervingly smooth. Lin said, "Captain, we have company. Multiple contacts. No energy signatures I recognize. No weapons lock. They're just there." Before Nix could respond, the comm system chimed. It wasn't a human frequency. It was a complex, melodic sequence of tones. Dr. Patel's eyes went wide. She said, "Captain, they're hailing us. That's not a radio wave. It's a modulated gravity wave. They're communicating by manipulating space-time itself." Nix took a breath. She said, "Can we answer?" Dr. Patel said, "Our translator software can try to find a pattern. It might take a minute." She worked furiously, her console flashing with linguistic analysis charts. After a long moment, she nodded. She said, "I have a rudimentary translation matrix. It's going to be poetic. Their language is conceptual, not literal." Nix said, "Open a channel. Visual if you can." The main viewport flickered. An image appeared. It was an alien, but not a monster. It was tall and slender, with smooth, pale skin that seemed to shimmer with its own faint light. It had no discernible mouth, but its large, dark, liquid eyes conveyed a sense of immense calm and intelligence. Its head was elongated, and two long, graceful limbs rested on a console in front of it. A voice filled the bridge. It was not spoken, but seemed to resonate directly inside their minds, a chorus of harmonious tones that the translator software rendered into halting, melodic English. The voice said, "Travelers, you have crossed the threshold. You have answered the echo. We are the Caliph. We are the tenders of the stellar winds. Welcome to our domain." Captain Nix stood tall, her voice betraying none of the shock she must have felt. She said, "This is Captain Eva Nix of the United Earthship Resolution. We are explorers from the Sol system. We came seeking the source of a signal." The Caliph tilted its long head, an expression of what might have been curiosity in its dark eyes. The voice in their minds said, "The echo was not for you alone. It is a call, a summons for all who listen. The gates are a legacy, and their keepers are long silent. We, like you, are seekers of knowledge. We follow the echoes to understand the whispers of those who came before." Dr. Patel muttered, almost to herself, "Incredible. They're not the builders. They're pilgrims, just like us." Nix asked, "What lies beyond this system? Our mission is urgent. We seek technology, knowledge that can save our world." The Caliph seemed to consider this. The voice said, "This domain is a corridor between the folds of the universe. The echoes can guide you, but the path is not straight. The currents of space-time are treacherous. Our vessels can read the currents. We can show you the way. Let us travel together. Let us share our knowledge. Our paths have converged for a reason." Nix was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the serene face of the alien. Aris could feel the weight of the decision on her shoulders. To trust this unknown species was a monumental risk. But to refuse their help could mean wandering lost in this alien sector of space until their supplies ran out, dooming Earth. The desperation that had launched the fleet now cornered them. Nix looked at Ares, a silent question in her eyes. He gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It was a gamble, but it was the only one they had. Nix turned back to the screen. She said, "Caliph, we accept your offer. We will proceed together as allies." The Caliph's luminous eyes seemed to soften. The voice in their minds was warm. It said, "An honor. We shall prepare for the convergence. Let our journeys become one." The two fleets, one of angular gray metal, the other of smooth, white elegance, began to move as one, deeper into the unknown territory beyond the Stargate. The alliance was forged. On the bridge of the Resolution, a fragile sense of hope began to bloom. But for Aris, it was a hope tinged with a deep and profound unease. The universe had just gotten infinitely larger and infinitely more complicated. The next few days were a blur of activity. The Caliph led the human fleet through the strange new space, which they called the flux. It wasn't empty space, but a region where space-time was thin and malleable. The Caliph ships navigated it with an effortless grace, their hulls shimmering as they rode invisible currents. The human ships struggled to keep up, their engines straining against the bizarre physics of the region. Without the Caliph, they would have been lost. A cautious exchange of information began. Dr. Patel and her team worked around the clock with the Caliph scientists, communicating through the slow, complex translator. The Caliph had no concept of linear time, seeing past, present, and future as interconnected. Their technology was biological, grown rather than built. Their ships were living organisms. The knowledge was paradigm-shattering. The Caliph offered to help the human fleet navigate the flux more efficiently. They proposed a synchronization of the two fleets' energy systems. The lead Caliph, whose name was translated as Lyra, explained it to Nix and Aris in a communication. The voice of Lyra filled the bridge. It said, "Your vessels fight the currents. They are rigid. Our ships sing with the currents. They are fluid. We can teach your engines to sing. We will create a resonance node between our power core and yours. It will harmonize your systems with the flux, allowing for smooth passage." Dr. Patel was ecstatic. She said, "Captain, this is a breakthrough we couldn't have dreamed of in 100 years. If their technology can interface with ours, it could revolutionize our power systems. It could be the very technology we need to save Earth." Nix was more cautious. She said, "What do you need from us?" Lyra's voice was serene. It said, "We will need to dock a small vessel with your flagship. Our engineers will work with yours to create the link. It is a delicate process. It requires trust." The word hung in the air. Trust. Nix looked at Aris. Her expression was torn. The potential reward was immense, but the risk was equally so. Allowing an alien species direct access to their flagship's core systems was a security nightmare. Aris said quietly, so only Nix could hear, "We're already trusting them with our lives, every second we follow them. This is just the next logical step. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. Their ships are vastly superior." Nix nodded slowly, her jaw tight. She made her decision. She said, "Lyra, we agree. You may dock with the Resolution. Our engineers will welcome yours." A small, teardrop-shaped Caliph vessel detached from their main ship and glided toward the Resolution. It docked with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure at the main engineering airlock. Aris and a security team met them. 3 Caliph emerged. They were tall and graceful, moving with a silent, fluid motion. They carried no tools, only small, glowing crystals that pulsed with a soft light. They were led to the engine room, a vast, cavernous space dominated by the glowing blue light of the ship's fusion core. The human engineers watched with a mixture of awe and suspicion as the Caliph began their work. They didn't touch the machinery. They placed their crystals at key points around the power core, and the crystals began to hum, emitting a low, melodic tone. The Caliph stood in a circle, their long fingers tracing complex patterns in the air, their minds seemingly focused on some invisible task. For hours, the process continued. The hum in the engine room grew, a resonant frequency that vibrated through the entire ship. On the bridge, Dr. Patel monitored the energy readings, her eyes wide with excitement. She said, "It's working, Captain. The core's energy output is becoming more stable, more efficient. The resonance field is beautiful. It's like they're tuning the engine like a musical instrument." But Aris felt a growing sense of dread. It was too easy, too perfect. He walked over to Dr. Patel's station. He said, "Lena, run a diagnostic. Not on the core's output, but on its subsystems. Check for any unauthorized data transfers, any backdoors, any parasitic code." Dr. Patel looked up at him, her brow furrowed. She said, "Lieutenant, their technology is biological. It doesn't use code, and there's nothing to find." Aris insisted. He said, "Humor me, Lena. Run the deepest scan you can. Look for anything, no matter how small, that wasn't there before." Sighing, Dr. Patel turned back to her console. She initiated a deep-level diagnostic, a process that would take time. Aris paced the bridge, his eyes fixed on the engine room camera feed. The K-Leith stood serene and focused, their work nearing completion. An hour later, Dr. Patel gasped. Her face had gone pale. She said, "Aris, you were right. Come here." Aris rushed to her side. She pointed at a line of data on her screen, a string of numbers that meant nothing to him. She said, "It's not code. It's a recursive energy loop. It's buried deep in the core's magnetic containment field. It's dormant now, but it's designed to do one thing. On a specific energy command, a command that could be sent from any K-Leith ship, it will trigger a feedback cascade." Aris felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. He asked, "A feedback cascade? What does that mean?" Dr. Patel looked up at him, her eyes filled with horror. She said, "It means our engine will overload. It will detonate with the force of a small star. It's a bomb, Aris. They've turned our ship into a bomb." The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. Nix spun around, her face a mask of cold fury. She said, "Lynn, seal the engine room. Security teams, converge on their position. Do not engage. Just contain them." She turned to Aris. She said, "Get down there. I want answers." Aris and his security team stormed the engine room, their weapons raised. The three K-Leith turned as they entered, their serene expressions unchanged. The lead K-Leith, the engineer, tilted its head. The voice in their minds was calm. It said, "The synchronization is complete. Is there a problem?" Aris stood before them, his rifle pointed at the alien's chest. He said, "The bomb. We found it." "Why?" For the first time, the K-Leith's expression shifted. It was not guilt or fear. It was confusion. The voice said, "Bomb? There is no bomb. There is only harmony." Aris said, "The recursive energy loop in our containment field. Don't play dumb with me." The K-Leith's large dark eyes seemed to look through him. The voice was soft, and for the first time, it held a note of something other than serenity. It sounded like sorrow. It said, "You were not meant to find that. Not yet. It is not a bomb. It is a key." Aris demanded, "A key to what? Our own destruction?" The K-Leith's voice grew fainter, as if from a great distance. It said, "Not destruction, ascension. The final gate requires a sacrifice, a catalyst of immense energy to open the final path. Your vessel was chosen to be that catalyst. It is a great honor." The cold logic of it was more terrifying than any malice. They weren't trying to kill them out of hatred. They were preparing them as a ritual sacrifice. Aris said, "We decline the honor." Suddenly, the hum from the crystals intensified. A wave of energy washed over them. The security team cried out and collapsed, their bodies twitching, unconscious. Aris fought to stay standing, his vision blurring, a piercing whine screaming in his head. The three K-Leith turned and glided toward the airlock, their movements unhurried. The last thing Aris saw before he blacked out was the lead K-Leith pausing at the door, turning its head, and the voice in his mind whispering a final chilling word. It said, "Believe." When Aris awoke, the bridge was in chaos. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the consoles. Nix was shouting orders. She helped him to his feet. She said, "They're gone." Their ship undocked and rejoined their fleet. "They've activated the loop, Aris. It's not at full power, but it's siphoning energy from our core, feeding on it, growing. Patel says we have less than an hour before it reaches critical mass." Aris's head throbbed. He said, "Can we stop it?" Nix's face was grim. She said, "Patel is trying, but the loop is integrated into the core itself. To remove it, she'd have to shut down the engine. We'd be dead in the water, a sitting duck." The Kaleth fleet had moved away, forming a wide, silent circle around the Resolution. They were waiting for the sacrifice. Lynn shouted from the helm, "Captain, the rest of our fleet is demanding answers. They don't know what's happening." Nix's voice was iron. She said, "Open a channel to all human ships." Now her face appeared on the view screens of 1,000 bridges. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. She said, "This is Captain Nix. The Kaleth have betrayed us. They have planted a bomb in the engine of the Resolution. They intend to use our ship to open something. We are working to disarm it, but our time is short. Do not engage the Kaleth. I repeat, do not engage. They are waiting for us to fight back. They want us to be divided. Our only chance is to stay united." A storm of panicked voices erupted on the comms. A Martian captain yelled, "We should attack! Avenge the Resolution!" Nix's voice cut through the noise like a laser. She said, "Negative, Commander. That's what they expect. That is a fight we cannot win. Our only weapon right now is our minds. Dr. Patel, report." Dr. Patel's voice was strained. She said, "The loop is adapting to my attempts to shut it down. It's learning. It's based on their biological tech. It's like trying to reason with a virus. I can't stop it from here." Aris's mind raced, grasping for any solution. The Kaleth's words echoed in his head. A key, a catalyst. Mikado. They weren't just destroying the ship. They were trying to use its energy for a specific purpose. He said, "Captain, if we can't remove the loop, maybe we can change it. Redirect it. If they want the energy from our core, let's give it to them. But on our terms." Nix looked at him, her eyes searching his. She said, "What are you proposing?" Aris said, "Patel, can you isolate the loop's frequency? The command signal it's waiting for?" Dr. Patel nodded. She said, "I can." Aris said, "Then let's not try to shut it down. Let's hijack it. Let's feed it so much power, so fast, that we overload the Kaleth's control of it. We'll use our own engine as a weapon. We'll turn their bomb back on them." It was a desperate, insane plan. It meant pushing their engine to the very brink of destruction and beyond. It could easily fail, destroying them in the process. But it was better than sitting here, waiting to die. Nix stared at the Kaleth fleet on the viewport, a silent circle of executioners. Her decision was instant. She said, "Do it." The next 30 minutes were the most intense of Aris's life. He worked with Dr. Patel, bypassing safety protocols, rerouting power from every non-essential system on the ship to the main core. The lights on the bridge dimmed. The hum of the ship became a deafening roar. The entire vessel shuddered, groaning under the strain. Dr. Patel's face was slick with sweat. She said, "Core temperature is critical. The containment field is starting to buckle." Aris yelled, "Almost there." "Kenji, I need you to aim the ship." Not at one of them. "Aim for the empty space right in the middle of their formation." Lin, his face pale but his hands steady, adjusted the ship's position. Nick stood behind them, her hand on Aris's shoulder, a silent, solid presence. Dr. Patel shouted. Now, Eris, the loop is saturated. It's unstable. Any more power and we lose the core. Eris took a deep breath. He said, "On my mark." He looked at Nyx. She nodded. He slammed his hand down on the console. He said, "Now." Instead of trying to contain the energy, they released it. A blinding beam of pure, white-hot plasma, the unleashed fury of a starship's heart, erupted from the Resolution's main deflector dish. It wasn't a weaponized beam. It was a raw, uncontrolled torrent of energy, shaped and focused by the very parasitic loop the Kaleth had created. It shot into the empty space at the center of the Kaleth formation. For a second, the energy seemed to hang there, a miniature sun. Then, the space itself began to tear. The Kaleth's own technology, the ability to manipulate space-time, became their undoing. The raw energy from the Resolution, focused by their own device, created a violent, unstable rift in the flux. A vortex of swirling, chaotic energy erupted in the middle of their fleet. The Kaleth ships, designed to ride the gentle currents of the flux, were caught in the maelstrom. Their elegant, teardrop hulls were tossed about like leaves in a hurricane. Alarms shrieked across the human fleet's comms as they watched the chaos unfold. The serene, untouchable aliens were suddenly fighting for their lives. On the bridge of the Resolution, the power died. The roar of the engine was replaced by an eerie silence. Emergency lights flickered on, casting long, dancing shadows. The ship was adrift, its heart broken, but it was alive. Nyx's voice was a hoarse whisper. She said, "Status report." Dr. Patel, slumped in her chair, gave a weak thumbs up. She said, "The loop is gone. The core is inert. But it didn't breach. We're alive, Captain." Aris looked at the viewport. The vortex was dissipating, leaving behind a trail of wounded Kaleth ships. Several were heavily damaged, their smooth hulls cracked and leaking faint, bioluminescent vapor. The perfect, serene formation was shattered. Then, a single Kaleth ship approached them. It was Lyra's vessel. It hailed them. Nyx accepted the call. Lyra's image appeared on the screen. The serene alien looked shaken. The voice in their minds was no longer calm. It was filled with a new emotion. Respect. Lyra said, "You fought back. You were not meant to be able to do that. You have broken the prophecy. You have rewritten the song." Nyx's voice was cold steel. She said, "Your prophecy would have killed us all. We make our own fate." Lyra was silent for a long moment. The voice, when it came, was different. It was humbled. It said, "We have underestimated you, humans. Your capacity for unexpected creation in the face of destruction is a quality we did not understand. We sought to use you as a key. Instead, you have become a door. You have opened a path none of us foresaw." Lyra gestured, and the view on the screen shifted. It showed the area where the vortex had been. The space there was different. It was calm, stable. The chaotic energies of the flux were gone, replaced by a corridor of normal, tranquil space. And at the end of that corridor, a new object was visible. Another Stargate. But this one was different. It was dark, silent, and it seemed to absorb the light around it. Lyra said, "The energy you released has forged a new path, a direct path to the final gate. The gate our prophecies foretold, but could never reach. You have done what we could not." The betrayal had, in a strange, paradoxical twist, led them to their goal. Nyx asked, "And what happens now? Do we continue this fight?" Lyra's voice was heavy with the weight of ages. It said, "The fight is over. There are those among my people who believed the old prophecies without question. They saw your arrival as a tool to fulfill a destiny written in the stars. You have shown us that destiny is not written, it is made. Those who held to the old ways are silent now. We have been changed by you. We will not stand in your way again. The path is yours. We will watch. We will learn. The Caliph fleet, what was left of it, slowly pulled back, giving the human ships a wide berth. They were no longer a threat. They were observers, witnesses to a new chapter they had not predicted. The human fleet was battered. The Resolution was crippled. But they were united, and they were free. They had faced the ultimate test, not just of technology, but of will. And they had survived. They had stared into the abyss of a cold, deterministic universe, and had answered with the chaotic, unpredictable, and ultimately indomitable spirit of humanity. Nyx turned to her crew. Her face was tired, bruised, but her eyes burned with a fierce pride. She said, "Get us moving. Get power from the other ships. I want to see what's on the other side of that gate." The fleet, scarred but resolute, began to move again, down the path they had carved with their own defiance, toward the final, silent gate. The journey was not over. The true mystery was just beginning, but they would face it together, not as victims of prophecy, but as masters of their own story. The race to the last Stargate had ended. The voyage into its heart was about to begin.